Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next WASTELESS WORLD Talks are here with Kevin and Bill and Michael. And today we have an ordinary word. We will speak about chain. And if I say the word, so I think this time Kevin is the first one. What do you see if you close your eyes, Kevin?
Links.
Okay.
Chain links. The great thing about a chain is that everything is linked together. And I saw an interesting documentary about changing an anchor chain. And some of the links are specially made to come apart, others are specially made to break under certain pressure. So a chain can be quite intelligent and quite controllable.
Interesting approach. What about you, Bill?
That was the first thought I had also, not the anchor chain, of course, but the steel chain, or a chain of people. In grade school, we would always be with our hand on the shoulder of the person in front of us, and there would be a chain. Let's make a chain. So there'd be a chain of a people when we walked outside. There are, of course, chain letters. Where you write a letter to somebody and they add a paragraph or two and then send it on to somebody else. And so those are the first things that came into mind. I'm very interested in your noontime discussion on this topic, because on the surface, and we always start on the surface and get far deeper, but on the surface it appears to be a very simple.
It was interesting for me when I hear chain. The first, of course, I'm a logistician, so it's the supply chain. But this is what even Kevin mentioned, and even you, because if you put the hand on the shoulder, you create something like a supply chain in some way. And it was very similar in the noon discussion. We come really closer, and we realize that the chain is frequently used to, let's say, to create masses in some way and to lead them in right or in the wrong direction, if you can decide what's right or wrong. But I don't know whether I ask you, I have a special question all the time when I have logisticians or people from business in my workshops. I ask them, where does the supply chain start? Where start the supply chain? What will be your answer?
Well, it starts with the demand. So it would start with the customer, or preparing for the customer. That would be my first response.
And you, Kevin?
I was thinking something similar, but when the order comes in, which is usually from the customer.
And I will reply it's wrong. And I will explain why. Because chain, as we imagine, is something which is connected to do the continuous movement or whatever. This is the chain. So I don't see the chain on the ship. I see the chain which drives something or which serves to drive something. And if you would like to say the start, you have to tear it into pieces. You have to open the chain. So there is no start or no end from my perspective. There is only way where you can enter and you can leave, but the chain must stay the same. If you break it, you have a chain, but with very different purpose, of course. And this is how I all the time explain it, because for me it's clear. And there was a great movie with Charlie Chaplin, The Modern Days, Modern Time, I think. And there was one scene which I remember all the time. He is standing on the production belt and he is fastening with both hands some nuts or bolts or whatever. So all the time. When he is too fast, it's a problem for the one. When he is too slow, it's a problem again. And then he falls in the machine and so on and so on. It's exactly the right thing, because you spoke, Kevin, about these special parts of a chain on the boat. One must break, the other must be stronger, and whatever. And generally, many people consider that if you improve one small part of a chain and you make, instead of steel, you make it out of gold, let's say, for whatever reason, that it's better, it's not. You create two weak points, at least two. So this is why, for me, the chain is the complexity. And this was one of the results of the noon discussion. The people spoke about the complexity, about society, nature, and so on. It was quite interesting.
Actually, guys, I got two more chains, which I don't know if they're the same or if they're actually opposite of each other. One is a chain of events, and the other is a chain reaction. And I think the interesting thing with these is that a chain of events, of course, they must be connected, you would have thought, but maybe they're not. Maybe there's a gap between each element in the chain, like dominoes falling. Is that a chain reaction or a chain of events?
Interesting. And we are coming back to, generally, for a chain to work, really, there must be nothing included in a chain. Because if there is not nothing, then it's not a chain, but it's a fixed piece of steel, let's say, which cannot move, because they are missing the small holes and the connections, like in the chain. This free space must be there for chain to be there. So it's quite interesting. And I have a today great discussion. Unfortunately, you cannot understand, it was in Czech, but about onichemology, and one of the onichemos, we have really, really great discussion. She's a tutor, and she's helping leaders generally. And she worked with the principle of nothing. That was so great. Really, really great.
So it's interesting that 50% of a chain is nothing.
Yes. That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if we speak frequently about nature, so what is in the nature? Is it a chain reaction? What's happening there? So let's put your question, Akev, into nature. So what is?
I would say that we'll see a really dramatic chain reaction with rising temperatures. The ice will melt, sea will rise, the weather will change, and that's all a chain reaction. Unfortunately, it seems to only have one direction. It's extremely hard with a chain reaction to reverse it, and you cannot push it back the other way because the nothing has gone. Actually, this is really interesting. Is a chain reaction a one-way process?
Just how I think
Sorry, say again.
I didn't
repeat
get
the question.
Yes, repeat the question, please.
Yeah, I was thinking that a chain reaction, does it only go one way, or can it be reversed and go back the other way?
I think any of the chain, any event is like dropping a pebble into the water, and you get the ripple effects that come off of that, and they go in all directions, and often are not recognized, but it's certainly not linear.
It is one thing, and I don't think that if there is a chain reaction that you can make it reverse. If you blast a bomb, you cannot deblast the bomb. I am working for quite a long time. I am working on the concept how to, Ukraine and many other countries, including Cambodia and other countries, there is a lot of landmines and a lot of African countries. And I am considering how to eliminate them all at once. They are made from metal, so let's use magnets. Or I don't know exactly how. I know how it works, usually pressure on something. But I just wonder if we can eliminate them at once, with the sound, for example, sound wave or something. And on the other hand, you can imagine if one mine blast, it's big blast, but if a full field blast, then you have a crater there, probably. I'm not sure. But I'm working with the idea how to to demine, because there are huge areas from the Second World War and all the wars after, generally, including right now. And, it's just another. So I don't think you can make it reverse. Maybe some of them you can. If the chain breaks, you can probably repair the break part. But I don't think I will call it reverse chain reaction.
You wonder why mine manufacturers don't put a date on their weapons so that after 1 year they become inert. Why do they have to stay alive for 50, 60 years? It doesn't make any sense at all.
That's interesting question. Very interesting question.
Good question.
And I just saw, recently, I saw the list. It was a graphical or infographic of top 50 most companies most valuated, so the richest companies in the world. Not a single war-related company, despite the fact, and not a single waste-related company. Only crude oil, and only twice there was crude oil. So 3 most profitable industries in the world are not listed in a list of most richest companies in the world. And still they are most profitable. Maybe because they do not put the date on their products. But it was interesting comment, Kevin. I will work on it.
I'm playing with the idea of the ripple effects from dropping the pebble in the water, and I'm wondering whether or not somebody who's much smarter, maybe AI, so to put it back the way it was before, would say that the ripples have to be neutralized. Is that a fair statement? I mean, how do we reverse? We're talking about reversing the chain reaction. Does that mean if the chain reaction is started by a landmine going off, we have to put the landmine back into the pre-exploded condition? You cannot reverse a chain reaction. I'm struggling with that one. I think maybe if we were just a whole lot smarter than we are, we would there would be a way to do that.
I think that we can not make it reverse, but we can stop or interrupt chain reaction. Kevin mentioned at the beginning the domino effect. Just leave one stone away.
Right.
If you have these matches in a row, and you take just one away, or 2 maybe, they will not burn all. So I think that this is exactly the utilization of nothing in some way. So, and it will be interesting because why I speak about the landmines. I saw yesterday a promotional video of a AI managed small trolley with wheels, and there is one landmine, and it's putting the landmines on the fields. Horrible, all digital. So it has a stack of landmines and just drop it as it. So horrible thing. And they promote it, that's even worse than the reality that they produce it.
I know that there's one of the laws of thermodynamics proves that time can only go in one direction. But I think that maybe a chain reaction will prove the same thing. Because most laws of physics can be reversed and run the other way, but thermodynamics can't. A room will always go from warm to cold. And I think the same with the chain reaction. You cannot reverse a chain reaction, which would then show that time can only go in one direction.
And I
Or
think
the chain reaction can only go in the same direction as time.
Only go in one direction, but can go at different speeds.
Yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing that Michael was saying is that if you add nothing to it, that will break the chain reaction.
you know, I spoke about this black US or black American walnuts, which it's so hard to break. And I watch a lot of videos about it, how the people do it. All the time, it's hard. But one guy says, okay, you have to put it in a water, in a shell, in a water for 2-3 days. It will slightly soften, and then it's easier. And then immediately when he says that, I came to and say to myself, okay, so what will happen if I put it in a water and give it in a freezer? It should help generally. I should, through the very different and the very unusual way, I should, and you know, maybe freezing the ground will freeze the technology of the landmine. I don't know. You know, it's just this is how my brain works. So you know, it's crazy. You say something and it's already turning in this cube in my head. And I will try this. I just need this to be a little more cured, how they call it, cured, and then I will try it, whether it will change. And I have here a standard freezer, but I can imagine if there will be industrial one, which can do it very fast, of course, or if I use this gases which are in the minus or whatever, I don't know how they are called even, I think it should work. We cannot hear you, Kevin. You are muted.
It'd be interesting to see what liquid hydrogen would do to it.
Yeah, I have to find some laboratory to help me with it.
But Michael, are they worth the effort? Do they taste that much better?
My daughter says that it tastes like washing pulver. And I don't know when she tasted a washing pulver, but they are really different. So they are really, I don't know. Have you tasted them, Bill?
Black walnut ice cream is my favorite, right? It's you know, butter pecan is creamy, but a very different taste from the sister nut. Black walnuts are great ice cream.
They are
and not
really
nearly
different.
Really different.
You know, next time, Kevin, you shouldn't go to the north. You should go to the south and little west. They will be waiting for you, but I will not break them for you. So it will be the challenge for you.
Perhaps each region has its own technique. You never know.
These are really special, and I think this is a North American tree generally, and they said this is one of the hardest nuts generally in the world. So, and here we come. You know, if you speak about the chain, everybody watch in current time watch the video how to break the chain, how to break the nut, and he or she tried generally the same way, just use different hammer or use some tool additionally and so on. But very few in this video tried a different way, completely different, you know. And this is what I think, this is the step, this is the nothing in the chain, which can make big change. Because if you do it all the time the same, you just change the size of the hammer, you know, not sure.
I saw an amazing use of nothing. It was so interesting. One of the hardest things to do, if you have a brick, imagine taking the bottom left-hand corner and measuring the distance between that and the top-hand right-hand corner. So you go diagonally up through the brick. It's impossible to do physically. But if you lay 3 bricks together, take the middle one out, measure the nothing in between, then you will get the distance.
Interesting.
And I think that there are generally, if you take nothing comparing to everything, everything you can imagine as a mountain, as a something which is physical. So it's generally the waste at the end. But nothing is all around. And there is more nothing than something. So, and I'm working with the degrowth theory right now and so on. So it's quite interesting to discuss these things. And last time discussion generally was very interesting. I have quite interesting responses to this, the degrowth topic. And this is one of the reasons why I choose chain. I choose it on Friday already. This time it came quite fast to me.
Yeah, I thought of a nature chain, which is of course the food chain.
Not only. Yeah. You have the air, you have the CO2 turn into oxygen, living energy. We can speak about the geothermal energy generally. It's all everything. It's a complexity chain. I think we are living in a chain.
Oh, we definitely are, and living in a chain. And in fact, there are simultaneously a million different chains that we are a part of. The chain of our own life cycle, the chain of us in the food cycle, the chain of at work, how you learn and then you mentor and so on, and the chain with our children, our parents and our children and their children. I see so many different chains that we are living in now. The environmental chain, what affects something and affects something else, and the ripple effects and so on. It almost stops me from thinking, just to realize how many different chains we are personally living in now. And I think that that's one of the problems, that discussions like this, I don't know if they rectify the problem, but they do nudge it a little bit more to be open, because when we're younger, when we have children and we have a job, and it is a busy time, and it's only when we can graduate out of that and go to the next chain, if you will, the next link in the chain, which is children on their own, freeing up our time to read more or talk more or whatever it is we choose to do. But that's a chain, and at one point, the end of life, which we have talked about death sometimes before, but I don't know that death is the end of life. Rather, it's just the next link in the chain. But there are many chains that we're in the middle of, and the more that we can understand those chains, that's the more that we can understand this existence that we live in.
One thing which came to my mind as you speak, Bill, you describe many chains, and if we imagine ourselves as the part of the chain, then it looks like that at the one moment right now, we are part of several chains. It's not just one. So it's the business chain, it can be whatever, so a lot of chains. But in industries, is this not common? If you have a chain, you have generally one purpose chain. There can be maybe two lines to it if you have a crane and you have two. But there are not so many, maybe in a fashion, so you can see some jewelry made out of small chains, bind it together. But I don't think there are many chains where one single element is part of hundreds, I don't know, 10, hundreds, whatever, chains which do completely different things.
Well, there certainly are many chains in the business world. that we can be part of at the same time. There's the chain of our co-workers that we uh, interact with every day, that we um, we know what's going on in their lives a little bit. We can help them a little bit, but it's a chain, and the same with our with our the hierarchy. We produce and make the person, our supervisor, look better, make the company look better, and we don't do it all ourselves. There are many people around us, and so that this is all links in the chain. How we influence the company, or how the company responds outside of the four walls to to address environmental issues or plastic issues or um, food, lack of food or lack of housing in the community. Um, I see many ways that companies act beyond the four walls, or the ripple effects go beyond the four walls. You mentioned the landmines, um, and the first thing that came to my mind was, how can somebody work for a company like that? You said, how can you brag about or promote, but how can a human being claims to be a human being get up and go to work and spend all day trying to figure out how to make a better land mine planting machine, right? How do you look at yourself in the mirror when you do something like that? Or just in any sort of business, if you don't have an active recycling for all the waste and you just throw it into the landfill, how do you work for a company like that that does not have a conscience or does not try to develop that conscience? There are many chains. How do you develop a conscience? That's a chain. So I'm not sure that I would agree with that there are more chains in the personal life than there are in the business life, unless I've missed your point somewhere, which I do often.
I think, Bill, you said something really interesting. The one word we've been missing all along is links. If one thing is linked to another, it is a part of chain. And I think this
Yes,
is really, really interesting. So we can be linked as human beings. We can be linked emotionally, biologically, physically. Through work, there are so many things, so many ways we're linked to others. And every one of those is a part of a chain. And human beings are absolutely interlinked. We are all together.
and each one of those links is unique. You mentioned about if the weakest link in the chain affects all the other links,
If I
but that's not binary. It's not either it is or it isn't. They're all different.
if I take what you says, Bill, and what you says, Kevin, then my question came: is nature organized the same way, or is it the something which once again the humans created as a part of society, giving really unspecific purpose, many links to human life? I have to be there, I have to do this, I have to be, and so on. But the tree is there to grow apples. Of course, as a side effect, it creates oxygen and so on, because without it, it cannot live. But it's generally the side effect. It's not the meaning of the tree. If there is a meaning, will be, I think, to grow and deliver apples, because it's the life cycle.
That's the way that we look at it as humans, because we want the apples. We need the apples. We build commerce around the apples. It's good nutritionally for our health and so on. But what if that apple tree on the edge of the apple grove is a sentry, is a sentinel, is the guard? Because we've recently proven that through the root systems and chemicals and so on, trees do communicate. Bushes communicate. They all communicate with each other. and maybe the purpose. See, and I don't think anybody has a single purpose, but let's just say that the purpose of that apple tree is to warn the others when the wrong kind of bug. We're in America, we're looking out for the lantern bug now, which kills trees tremendously fast. So I think there's different purposes for that for a tree. It may be to protect the others. It may be to have offspring. We know, I mean, I believe that some people's purpose, they come onto this earth, their purpose is to have that child who will have another child who will find the cure to cancer. And that's that grandfather's purpose among all the other things that it does. And so I think the same way with trees, I think there are a whole list of purposes. And we recognize one because we need it, but maybe the trees recognize another one because they need the protection. Maybe others recognize a third or a fourth or a fifth purpose. Purpose is an interesting word.
Hmm.
And I think even if you take a tree, for example, it is a part of the chain because it needs insects to pollinate the tree to make the apple. It needs sunshine, it needs wind, it needs water. It provides, a tree provides home for all sorts of different creatures. So I think nature is the ultimate chain where everything is in, all the links are perfectly set. It is the most perfectly interlinked thing you could ever imagine.
You have come, we as a group have come to that same conclusion about nature in a number of different conversations. Nature is our role model. Nature.
It's so interesting because maybe we just and we'll name it. Maybe we just do not understand what is the real meaning of the tree, what is the main purpose, because we are not able, with our limitation of thinking, we are not able to see the complexity of nature. Few people can. Frequently, they have the trouble that they cannot explain it to others. Time to time, they put it in some strange formulas, which few people do understand, and the others do not just remember because we must learn it. But it's quite interesting, because I think the chain is connecting even all our discussions. It's a chain. Every single one was part of this chain. Chain of change. One of the results in the noon discussion was that chain is change. That was interesting. Because if you say, if you use the word change instead of chain, then you have supply change. Which in fact, it's the reality. It is supply change or exchange, it doesn't matter. So, and here we come again to the language and all the topics. Very interesting discussion again.
And I think also we're looking at chains and making them very positive. So it's not, a chain isn't a shackle. It's not something to imprison you with. It is actually it's how nature operates.
It could be. It could be good or it could be bad.
It depends on the way how we use it. Before I started this noon event, generally, I checked when, because I would like to know the history of chain. And I asked Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says 259 before Christus, there was the chain invented. And I said to me, no, it was not, because in nature it was. So I tried to put in Wikipedia this comment. It remains there 43 minutes before deleted. I have the wrong IP address. But, we have spoken about the good parts of the chain, back part of the chain, and frequently we see the chain reaction of bad decisions. Somebody take a bad decision, but he is an influencer, politician, whoever, and the other follow without asking. And you know, I see it in the academic publications frequently. They do not look for the content. They just, yeah, he is there, I can use it. With no interest about the reality. And yesterday, generally, I realized, do you know what was yesterday during Halloween? What was the biggest scary moment for giants?
No.
It was the truth. Revealing the truth is for giant the scariest moment they can imagine.
And that's one of the most hopeful things that that we have said. In the old days, before transparency has just become so much easier with our, and more difficult at the same time. But it's very difficult to hide from your past statements or your past actions. And it used to be the old boys network. You don't tell on me, I'm not going to tell on you. And so things could be hidden. You could have a good public face, and meanwhile, you're doing all sorts of bad things. But in this day of social media, and everybody has a camera and so on, body cams on the policeman. The good old boy network is it's still there in a small degree, but and so when you speak of the truth happening, um, and I see that as a transparency illuminating somebody's action or whatever, and hopefully, and that's why it's hopeful that transparency will continue to show the truth.
Because the most interesting consequence of that is accountability. Once we've seen what people are doing, once someone has been exposed, once everyone can see what's happening, if you're doing something wrong, you have to account for it.
100%.
And for the giants, that would be a really difficult thing to cope with.
We have only 1 minute 30 left. And let me ask you, do you know the real meaning of NDA?
Non-disclosure agreement?
Never delivered answers. And what is interesting, the same 3 letters are used for DNA, just in different order. But it was fascinating discussion, which ends before we started again. So it's really fascinating with you. And I would like to thank everyone, and you especially, for spending the time, which was not a single second was wasted, and wish everyone have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, be human, and don't fear the transparency and the truth. Thanks a lot, and see you next week. Bye-bye.